Hey guys, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yeah, Dinesh.
Hope you can able to see my screen. Okay, so let's start our discussion. So what we have completed in our yesterday session, I think we have covered the Docker volume. Is that right? Docker storage part we have discussed.
Yeah.
Along with that, we also created one private repo with help of a registry, and we pushed and pulled the image via this registry also. That also we have completed in our yesterday session. So today I have another topic from your Docker, a small topic that I want to tell you this today. So which is Docker networking. So we are going to learn about for Docker networking. It is also an additional or important topic uh, pertaining to your Docker. So can anyone tell me what is Docker networking? So what is Docker networking? What do you think? What does mean by Docker networking? So what I'm going to teach you in this particular session, I am going to tell you how to use the networking in the Docker. How to use the networking in the Docker. Guys, so far, right, we have created one server, say for an example, Ubuntu system or Ubuntu server, where we have created the image and also we have created the container, and we basically access the container or application, right? Everything is only on a single system, right? Only on a single machine or a single system. Everything we have done, right? Like accessing the images or maybe accessing the container or applications and all, we have done, right? So remember, whenever, say for an example, let me take. Right. So I will. Okay. We have otherwise let me go to tool.co.in. Here I have one app which is in this one. Assume or Jambo. Okay. Okay. See, suppose wait guys, I will take one. Okay. Suppose I have one system, right? I have one system. On top of the system, we basically what we will do, we will install the Docker, right? You know how to install the Docker also. apt, right? Install docker.io space -y. Then you basically, you will install the Docker via that particular command. So once you have installed the Docker, what will happen on your system? Whenever if you install the Docker, right, in default, that will create one layer, guys. That will create one layer. We can call it as a network layer. That will create one network layer, a default network layer, which is nothing but Docker 0. The layer name is Docker 0. So Docker 0, it's one network layer, will be created in default on top of your machine, right, on your system. Whenever if you install the Docker. If you are not installing the Docker, it will not create it. But if you install the Docker, it will create a network layer which is called Docker 0. This Docker 0 we can also call it as a bridge network, a bridge network layer. So bridge network layer will be created. So if someone is asking right in the interview, hey, what is the default network which is created by your Docker engine, which is nothing but your bridge network layer, which is Docker 0. Docker 0 will be created. So suppose you have installed the Docker and the layer bridge network got created. Consider the bridge network got created. Whenever if you have a bridge network, right, on top of your Docker that you installed on your server, the bridge network will get some IP address CIDR range. It will get IP address CIDR range. It will get it. You know CIDR, what is CIDR and all, right? So it will get some range, IP range. It will get it when the Docker bridge network. It will get it, right? So now, suppose if you are creating some container, consider you are creating one container C1 and also you are creating the container C2. This C1 and C2 container, right, where it will get the IP address, because C1 will have some IP address, the container C2 will have some IP address. It will get the IP address from the bridge network only. Where it will get the IP address? From the bridge network. From the bridge network, it will get the IP address. Guys, in default, in your Docker, one container can able to communicate with each other. It means that maybe I can say they are in network. They are in network, so they can able to communicate with each other, right? So remember, whenever if you install the Docker on top of your Docker engine or maybe a server, one layer will be created which is called Docker 0. It is also called as a bridge network layer. That bridge network layer will get some CIDR range, will get some IP address range. This IP address range only it will be given to. It will be given to whatever the Docker container is running on top of your Docker machine. Say for an example, there are 2 Docker containers running. This Docker container, how it will get the IP address? From the bridge layer, the bridge network layer. You have to remember. So in default, in your Docker, one container can able to communicate with other network. It means that they are in network. They are in network. So let me tell this practically. Suppose if you type, what happened every time it is doing this? Okay. See, I will write. First of all, I will connect my EC2 machine once again. So let me copy the chmod command. Okay. And chmod, and I will connect to this machine. Once it is connected, I will write sudo space. Okay, clear this. And let me show this bridge network on Docker. Right. So see. See. So when you install your Docker, right, it will get the bridge network. In bridge network, we can create the mini container, right? That container will get the IP address from this Docker bridge. So I will show this practically. See, suppose if I type Docker space --- version. So I have a Docker installed in my machine. So if you want to check, is there any images? Any images? I don't have any image. I have any container is available. Docker ps space -a. I don't have any container also. So now let me type one Linux command or network command, which is called IP space A. So this command, it will find all the network in your Docker. So when you press enter, can you see here? We can see, right, different IP addresses or different network, right? So this is one network which is called loopback. It's my machine network. And we are using the Ethernet, which is my AWS, right? On top of that, I have created a Ubuntu server. So that private address, you can able to find it here. And the Docker that we have installed, right? I said Docker 0. Docker 0. It's a default layer, a default network layer, which is available on top of your machine. So this is also will get some CIDR range. Can you see here? 172.17.0./16. It is an IP address range, right? So from this IP address only, your container will get the IP address. From this range only, your container will get the IP address, right? So this is what I'm talking about. This is called your default network layer on top of your Docker. So once you install, you will get this layer. Network layer will be created for your, that's called a bridge network, right? I said bridge network layer, Docker 0. Right? This one is my machine and this one is my EC2 that I have created, AWS Ubuntu server that I have created, right? That one, that refers Ethernet, and this one is a loop back, right? Fine. But are you clear with this one? This is one network layer, Docker 0 network layer, which is created. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Guys,
So
remember when you install the
Docker 0.
Docker, yes, come again. Yep, tell me.
Basically Docker 0 is the one which we look for, right?
Yes, correct. Docker 0 is the one we look for. The Docker 0, how it is created? Because you install the Docker in your server. That's the reason you got this Docker 0. It's a one network layer. So one network layer. So
Okay.
it is a default network. Docker 0 is a default network in Docker, which means suppose if a container is created, right, by default, where it is created on top of this Docker 0. How the container will get the IP address? It will get it from Docker 0 because Docker 0 has some IP address CIDR range, right? From this IP address, it will get the IP address. We'll check that as well. But let me copy this better. Let me copy this and I can keep it here. And thereby you will understand. This is the Docker 0 CIDR range. Fine. Guys, fine.
Yes, Dinesh.
So we can able to see this bridge network, right? Docker 0, and also we can see the IP address range. So from this range only, the Docker container will get the IP address automatically. Not we are assigning. Automatically, the Docker container will get the IP address from this range. So I said one container in default will communicate with other container, right? Suppose consider like one container as web application and other container you have hosted the database. Now this web application can easily communicate with that database. This two container, web application and also database, it is hosted on top of your bridge network. So bridge network has some CIDR range. It will be given to your container. So that's what I mean. Say to understand practically. So what I will do, I will run some container. There we will understand. Say for an example, I will pull say two images. I am going to pull. Say Docker. What happened actually? See, listen. Now I'm going to pull some image. Say Docker pull. I will pull the Ubuntu image first. I will pull one Ubuntu image. latest version I'm pulling. And along with that, I'm pulling some, say, CentOS image also I'm pulling. So Docker, a pull, say I'm pulling one CentOS image. There are two images I have now. So if I type Docker images, I can see two images. So what I will do, I will create a container now. So if we type IP space A, so we have this Docker 0, right? So this is the CIDR range, 172.17.0.1/16. So let me clear this and I will run the container. How can I run the container? Docker container run space -it name. Say I'm creating one container called C1. C1 is the container, and I will give the Docker image name, say Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the Docker image name. Now press enter. So it created one container, right? Let me create another container also. Or otherwise, I have created a container, right? Say if I say Docker PS, I can see one container got created is running. Now let me check the IP address of this particular container. We can check the IP address of this particular container. How to check the IP address of this particular container? I will type Docker inspect space. What is the container name? The container name is C1. Docker inspect space C1. If you type it, it will give the container name. Sorry, the network. The network you can able to see it. IP address. Press enter. Can you see here what network it is using now? It is using the bridge network, right? The bridge network I said Docker 0. It's a bridge network. And here can you see the IP address 172.17.0.2. Can you see here? Here 172.17.0.1/16 is the CIDR range. From this range only it is getting, right, IP address. From this range only it is getting the IP address from the bridge network. Right? So then it means that this IP address, the container is getting, right, it is running on top of your bridge network, the Docker 0. So Docker 0 only provides the IP address to this particular container. Say, if I type IP space A, here we have one more, version Ethernet got created now. One more version Ethernet got created, right? So this version Ethernet is for container. It is for the container, right? The container that we have created, right? That got created. So from the Docker 0. So now suppose, let me run one more container. That way you will understand. Say Docker container, I run space space -it name. Say this is my C2 container. And I will give a Docker image name. A Docker image name, say CentOS. This time I can go for CentOS. Now it will create one container, right? Now if you want to inspect this one, Docker inspect space C2. Press enter. Can you see here? It is also running on same default network, Docker 0, which is called a bridge network. And the IP address it got 172.17.0.3, which is dynamically assigned by your Docker. Right? So if you type your IP space a network command, if you type it, can you see one more version Ethernet got created for your container? So this is for your default Docker 0 bridge network, and this too for your container. Are you clear, guys?
Yes, Dinesh.
See, you will find two width, right? So version Ethernet. One is for first container, C1 container. It is also running on top of Docker 0, which is the default network. And we have created another version Ethernet also. It is also running on top of your Docker 0 network. It is also Docker 0, and it is also a Docker 0, which is a bridge network that it is running. Right? So how your container getting IP address from the bridge network, from the default Docker 0 network, which is called a bridge network. Now, say for an example, you want to check whether the container is communicating with each other. I want to check like whether my container is communicating with each other. One container is it communicating with other container. So to understand this one, so let me go to the Docker. Say I will go to the C2 container. How to go inside the C2 container? Docker exec space -it. You have to use the container name, say C2. I will type bash. Press enter. Now I am inside the container 2. Now from this container, I'm going to call the first container. I'm going to call the first container. So from this container, I want to call the first container. Say I'm writing ping. I will write the ping. First container IP address is 172.17.0.2, right? So from first container, second container, I'm going to communicate with the first container. Let me check whether it is communicating. Yes, right? Can you see here it is pinging? We are getting the response. We are seeing the response. And it means that we can able to communicate. We can, one container capable to communicate with other container. Are you clear?
Yes, Dinesh.
So what we discussed so far, we discussed the default network is running on top of your Docker, which is called a bridge network, or we can call it as a Docker 0. Docker 0. So when you install the Docker, automatically you will get the Docker 0 to your machine. That's a network layer. It's a bridge network layer. Will have some CIDR range. From this CIDR range, your container, whatever that you are creating, that will get the IP address. So we discuss that practically. Remember, this container are in network, right? Or are in same network, same bridge network. So one can communicate with other container. This is what we have discussed. But now question is, so can we able to create our own bridge network? Can we able to create our custom bridge network? User defined bridge network. Will I able to create? Because if you type Docker network space ls command, right? Docker, okay, I have to exit. Sorry, I have to exit. And maybe I will delete the container. You know how to delete the container? How to delete the container? Do you remember? Docker run.
Yeah.
Docker
Doc
rm
RM
space
hyphen
-f. You can
F
provide C1, C2.
one.
So it will delete the container if you type Docker ps command. I don't have any running container now. Now, if you type Docker network ls command, right, it will tell you what are the networks are available in your Docker. There are 3 networks are available in your Docker. There are 3 drivers are available. Network layers, network drivers. One is called bridge network driver, and we have a host network driver, and we have a null network or null network driver. There are three network layers are available. One is a bridge network, which is called Docker 0, and we have a host network and also null network. But I am talking about only a bridge network, right? That's a default network which will be created once you install the Docker daemon once you install. Now, suppose if you want to create one custom network, I want to create one custom network. Can I able to create the custom network? See, if you type Docker network -help command, right, it will tell you whatever the command is available inside the network. So we have different commands, right, to handle your networks. Now, my expectation, I want to create one bridge network. How to create one bridge network on top of your Docker? So let me type Docker network. Say create. Create is the command to create our own customizable or user-defined network. If you want to create it, you can write docker network create. Docker network create is the command you have to use it. So in that command, you can give which kind of network that you want to create. A D refers a driver. Which driver you want to create? Whether do you want bridge driver or host driver or none driver. Which driver you want to create? Say I want to create one bridge driver. I want to create one bridge driver. So for that, I will give a bridge. And you can give any name for your bridge network. Say for an example, I'm giving BR1. BR1 is the name of your bridge network I'm giving. So Docker network create space hyphen driver a bridge BR1 like that I have given. So it will create one bridge network. See, if you type this command when you press enter, right, automatically this BR1 that you are creating, it will get the IP address. It will get the subnet will be assigned. It will get the IP address and subnet, everything will be assigned automatically. But if you want to give your own subnet, own IP addresses, right, that we want to give, maybe in some cases in real time, I don't want my server or maybe Docker should initiate this automatic IP address or automatic subnet and all. I want to give some custom subnet or custom IP address. Then you can also give by using hyphen say subnet. You can give any IP address. Say for an example, I'm giving 192.168. Say 0.0/16 like that I'm giving my own IP address. And suppose if you want to give some gateway, I can also give it. The gateway is suppose 192.168.0.1 is the gateway. I'm going to use it. So like that you can define your own subnet and own gateway. You can able to define. Even if you are not defining, that's not a problem. Automatically you will get the IP address and subnet and all. Right? So now if you press enter, your network got created. So to check this one, I will type docker network ls command. Can you see here? One network got created, which is called a BR1. We got one network. A BR1, the driver that I have used, which is a bridge driver. What driver I used? I used the bridge driver. So are you clear, guys? Yes or no? Why, what happened? So I will run some container here. I will run some container. So how to run the container? Docker container run space -it hyphen name. Say I'm typing C1 is the container name, and you can define the network, right, that you have created. Say suppose I'm defining my network is BR1 is the network, right, that you have created, and you can give the image name. Say I'm giving Ubuntu. For Ubuntu image, I'm going to create the container, but I want in another network. In which network? This is my user-defined network, which is my user-defined bridge network, my custom network, in which I'm going to run this code, right? Run this container. So press enter. Fine. Now can you check this one? Docker inspect space. What is the container name? C1. And can you check here? This network this time it's a BR1. BR1. And what is the IP address? The IP address, whatever the range that you have given, right? That IP address it got actually. Whatever the range that you have given while creating the network that you got. Say, let me create one more container also. Right, IP space A, if you give it, you can see, right? So one container got created on BR1. On BR1, we got the container. Fine. So let me create one container now. Docker container run space -it hyphen name. Say this is BR2. sorry, BR1, I'm sorry, so C2, and you can give a network. Say the network is, I want to give my own network, which is my BR1 and -D, say suppose 10 to 8. Now press enter, you got one more. So to check this one, Docker inspect, I can type C2. Now can you see here? Now 192.168.0.3 IP address, which is under the BR1 network. Which is under the BR1 network. Now BR1 network, on top of that, you have created 2 containers in your bridge network. Now one container wants to communicate with the other container. Is that possible? Let me check. So Docker execc space -it, and I can write the container C1 and I will type bash. And I'm inside the container. Let me ping the IP address 192.168.0.3. Let's see, is there any response? What happened? Omit. Let me. I think I got it. It's space -it C2 dash. So see, it can able to communicate, right? One container can able to communicate with other container. So you can also create your custom network. You can also create your custom network or custom bridge network. You can able to create it, and from there also you will make one container, it will communicate with other container. Are you clear so far?
Yes, Dinesh.
So let me remove this container, Docker RM space -f. I will type C1 and C2. It got removed. Now I want to remove the network also. I will remove my network, Docker network, RM, BR1 is the network. Now check Docker network, LS. So I have bridge and host. Okay, fine. So this is all about your bridge network. So far I'm talking about the bridge network. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? On bridge network, how to create the bridge network, your own customized bridge network, and how the networking is working here, who is assigning the IP address to your container. Are you clear? Guys, I'm expecting the answer. Say yes or no. Okay. What is the other type of network? We have a host network. Also, we have none network. We have a host network and also none network. Guys, when you install the Docker, you will get a default network which is called Docker 0. It's a network layer which is called as a bridge networks that you know. But we have other type of networks also which is called host network and none network we have. Now, this is the time to talk about the host network. Guys, when you use the host network, right? In default, when you start your container, it will not run on host network. It will run on your bridge network. But suppose if you want your container, it shouldn't run on your bridge network. Instead, I want to use the host machine, the Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu server, right? Or laptop, that Ubuntu machine. That machine has some network, right? That IP address in which my machine should run. When I say run, that container should run. Will it possible? Yes, it possible with help of a host network. So what I mean, when your container is running on top of your host machine network, then basically, that will have the same IP address as the host machine IP address, right? So whatever the IP address of your host machine, it will be given to your container because it is running on your host network. So I will make you to understand this one. So what I will do, I will create one container, or before that I will type IP space A, and I have loop back, and we have this one. This one is the Ethernet, which is my machine IP address. IP address CIDR range, you can find it here. This is my machine IP address CIDR range. My Ubuntu machine IP address CIDR range, this one. 172.31.8.69. Now what I will do, I will create one container, guys. And this is the CIDR range of your bridge network. This is the CIDR range of your Docker 0. And this is the CIDR range of my Ubuntu virtual machine. Right? So I will create one container now. I already have images, I hope. Docker images. I have a Docker image, Ubuntu and CentOS. So let me create one container. Container run space -it name. Say this is my H1 or C1 is the container name. C1 is the container name. And I will write -network. -network. Which network I'm going to use it? I'm going to write host network. I'm going to use the host network. This time I'm not using the bridge network. I will use the host network. Space -d. Say one server, I can take it, Nginx. To understand better, I will use Nginx that I'm going to use. So press enter, unknown tag, -network, spelling mistake. Network. Okay. It is pulling the Nginx image first. And then it is installing this one. Now container also got created. To check this one, I will type docker ps command. You have this container C1 for the image called Nginx. We got this one. Now let me check IP space A. And here we don't have, can you see? We don't have any network, right? Any network got created? No. So say docker inspect C1, press enter. And can you see this network is the host network? This network is the host network. In host network, there is no IP address here. Why it is not having any IP address? Because this IP address is same as your host machine, the Ubuntu machine that I'm using. The same IP address. That's the reason it is not showcase. It is not showing anything. The reason because this IP address, your container IP address, this time it is the host machine IP address. So now it is running on host network. Same as your machine IP address. Say, can you check it here? I will type that IP address. What is that? This one IP address, colon 80. Press enter. And can you see here Nginx page? Guys, I'm not doing any port forwarding here. Did I? Can you see here? I didn't write. I didn't do any port forwarding. But I can see the Nginx page. How? The reason because it is running on top of your host machine itself. Host server network it got. That's the reason I no need to do the any port forwarding and all. Now even if I check right, the curl command. Let me check curl command. Say local local host colon 80. Can you see here? I got the response. HTML response. I got the HTML response. This is the page, right? This page, they have written the HTML. Can you see this HTML? When you click on inspect, I can see this HTML, right? The same HTML, I can see it here. HTML head title is welcome to Nginx. Title is welcome to Nginx. The same HTML response that I got with help of a curl command also. So it means that I can able to run my server on host network also. Host machines network also. That is called host network. This is the another network. But in default, when you run a container, it will not run on host network. It will run on bridge network. But if you want to run on host network, you can try this command. Try this command. -hyphen network host you can give it. Are you clear, guys? Yes or no?
Yes.
Aman Kritika. So there are two networks we have discussed so far. One is host network and this one, bridge network. So let me remove this container, Docker container, rm -f c1 container. So Docker I don't have any container. Okay. I have clear this Docker network ls. So we know how to work with the bridge network, how to work with the host network. Now the last network is the none network. What is none network? Is whenever suppose you want to do some kind of testing, or otherwise I can tell, right? What is none network first? None network is nothing but when no IP address is assigned to the container, that we can call it as none network. So your container will not get any IP address. In your host network, the host machine network will be assigned to your container. In bridge network, the bridge network will assign the IP address to your container. But in none network, your container will not get any IP address. That is called a none network. So where it will be used? Why we need to assign a none IP address, no IP address? So it is mostly, used for application that need to test in isolated environment. Suppose if you are performing some kind of testing, in that case, right, I don't want to give some IP address to my application or container because maybe I want some isolated space. I want some isolated environment. I want to protect my system. No one should have the access to my environment. Then in that case, what you can do while doing the testing, right? That time maybe you can work with your none environment. When I say none environment, none network, right? So when you create a container on the none network, you basically will not get an IP address. Your container will not get an IP address. So if you type Docker run space -it -name, the container name say I'm giving C1, and I will use the network called none network. I will use the network called none network or null network, whatever. -D, the image, say, I will use CentOS image. I will type CentOS. Now press enter. See, one container got created. Now to check whether is there any IP address assigned, Docker inspect. Inspect is the command, and you can give the container name. Press enter. Can you see here? This network is the none network. Your container is not getting any IP address. Your container will not get any IP address. The container will not get any IP address. Even you will log into that container, Docker exec space -IT, and the container name is C1. I will type a bash here, and I have logged in here. If you type IP space A, can you see here? Only you can see the loopback IP address. Only you can see the loopback IP address. You will not see the IP address for your container C1. You will not see the IP address for your container. So only for testing. Suppose on your container you are running some script, you are creating some Apache server, and you are installing some software, and you have done all kind of testing and all. Once your testing is completed, then what you can do, you can remove this none network from the container, and then you can attach to a host network, or maybe a bridge network, where you can connect it, where you can attach it. Say, suppose I have done my testing. I'm going to remove this, disconnect this network. So how can I disconnect? Docker network disconnect. So if you want to understand the command, you can type -help command. So that will tell you there is a command called disconnect, right? Disconnect a container from the network. So I'm going to disconnect Docker disconnect network disconnect. Sorry. Network disconnect. Which network you want to disconnect? None network I want to disconnect. None network. I'm going to disconnect. What is the container name? C1. So press enter. Right? So I have disconnected this none network. Now I'm going to attach, or I'm going to connect this network. I'm going to connect this network to your bridge network. How to do that one? Can I see a connect command here? Connect a container to your network. Docker. See, if you type Docker PS command. Can you see here? This is a C1 container. It is not having any ports. It is not having any ports. Now I am going to connect this. Docker network connect is the command. You have to use it. Which network you want to connect? Say bridge network I want to connect. Bridge. What's the container name? C1. That's it. Now if you check Docker inspect and container name C1. Can you see here? Now it is connected to the bridge network, and it got the IP address from your bridge network. It got IP address from your bridge network. This way, you can work with your none network. Whenever if you are doing some testing, you want some isolated environment. I don't want to create some IP address for my container. In that case, you can go for none network also. Once you have completed your testing, right, then you can attach this particular network. You can attach this particular network to your bridge network or host network, whatever that you want, with help of the command that I taught you. Docker network disconnect none N1, Docker network connect a bridge C1, like that. Sorry, clear guys?
Yes, Dinesh.
Oh. Docker container rm space -f C1. Docker container. 1 minute. Docker. No container is running. I have removed all. Okay. Docker PS space IP. Okay, it is removed actually. Any question on your Docker networking part? This host network And we have, we can share any image in null networks. We can share any images in null network. Yeah, we can share it also. That's not a problem. Cool. Guys, the next topic, it is related to your Docker Compose and Docker Swarm. Only these two are pending from your Docker side, Docker Swarm and Docker Compose. And what I'm expecting tomorrow, just we prepare the playbook, Ansible playbook, YAML file. So just to see how we have to write the YAML file, what is the syntax you have to follow, and what is the indentation. So all those things, just revise it once. If you revise tomorrow, we are going to create a Docker Compose. We are going to learn Docker Compose. In Docker Compose, we should use the YAML file, same YAML file, right? Is that okay?
Okay, then.
So let me stop it today. So we'll see, we'll discuss tomorrow. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Dinesh.